Recording in progress.
Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order now. It is 6:02 p.m. on January 11th, 2023. And this is a public meeting of the Community Engagement Subcommittee of the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. Mouthful. Yes, next slide, please. All right, let's get started with introductions from our PCCEP members. Celeste is first on my screen. Let's start there, please, and pass it to the next person when you're done.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Glad to see you here. Welcome, everyone. And I'm Celeste Carey, co-chair of the PCCEP, and looking forward to working with everybody. Female pronouns, and I'm going to pass it to Gloria.
And PCCEP members, my name is Gloria Canson. My pronouns are she and her. I'm glad to be here tonight for the meeting. Ready.
Let's go to Tia.
Hello, my name is Tia Palafox. My pronouns are she, her. I am a newish co-chair to the Community Engagement Subcommittee. I've been a member of PCCEP since August 2021. Thanks so much for being here tonight. Very excited for the first community engagement meeting. Thank you. And Ashley.
Yeah, thanks, Tia. Yep, my name is Ashley Schofield. I'm also a newer member who was appointed back in August of 2022. And I am currently serving as the co-chair of today's subcommittee. So thanks everyone for being here. Leslie, how about you? And I'll use my pronouns. The pronouns I use are her and she. Thank you. And Leslie.
Hi everyone, my name is Leslie Martinez. I also joined PCCEP this last August with Ashley, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm very excited to be joining you all tonight, and thank you so much for having me. I'll go ahead and hand it off to Pastor.
Well, it's very good to see everybody. Happy New Year, I believe. I didn't get a chance to say that to everyone. I am Pastor Weisner. I'm very excited about being here tonight. I will change my name on here from Pastor Councilman, but I am Pastor Weisner, use pronouns he and him, and looking forward to this exciting year and all that we're working toward to build our team, as well as what we're able to bring in and make our community feel trusted and safe. Again, I'll pass it over to Byron. It looks like he's out there.
Thank you, Pastor Weisner. Byron Vaughn, PCCEP member and chair of the Racial Equity Subcommittee. Happy New Year's, everybody. Glad everybody's here.
And I think Nathan is last.
Is he?
Yes, thank you. Nathan Castle, he, him pronouns, live in Central East Side, been on PCCEP for, well, since like June or July, and time flies when you're having fun. Feels like just yesterday. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm also looking forward to seeing what this committee does in the new year. It's exciting times. And I will just mention that I have to leave for conflict, unfortunately, at 6:20 tonight. So I'll only be here for a short time.
Thanks for being here, Nathan. Let's see, at this time, I'll invite anyone else to introduce themselves. I know I see Jared here.
Hi, thanks, Dory. My name is Jared Hager, he, him pronouns. I'm with the U.S. Department of Justice here in my role as a monitor and counsel for plaintiff in United States versus City of Portland, a case that has been resolved with a settlement agreement in relation to police reform. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jared. And anyone else want to introduce themselves since we have the time? Any community members?
Sure, I'm Corinne Frechette and I'm PBAC member, and I am actually on the outreach subcommittee in my committee. So I just wanted to reach out to you and say hello. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here, Corinne.
And Barbara Boshinsky, she, her, Portland Cop Watch.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
Good to see you. All right. Anyone else want to say hi?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Barb.
Barb Rainish, she, her pronouns, PCCEP groupie, and member of the Portland Police Behavioral Health Unit Advisory Council, as well as now a member of the Advisory Council for the Behavioral Health Resource Center downtown. Just let you know where we can make some connections here.
Awesome. Hi, Barb. Okay. All right. Let's now take a look at what we'll do in, oh, sorry. First, the community agreements. Nathan, would you mind reading our community agreements?
Of course, I'd be happy to. Community agreements, listen respectfully and actively, share airtime, be present and open to new information and perspectives, assume positive intent, respect each other, respect the group, speak your own truth, communicate directly, honestly, and respectfully, ask questions to clarify, call out bias, and be okay with ambiguity.
Thank you. Okay, and for an overview of today's meeting, so the co-chairs of this subcommittee, Tia and Ashley, intend to use this meeting to talk about how they conceptualize this subcommittee kind of fitting into the work of the larger PCCEP, especially as this is a brand new subcommittee to PCCEP. And so they're kind of hoping to present their vision of what that looks like and hear from all of you present tonight as well about how you see that working. And so with that in mind, they intend to use the rest of the meeting to kind of work on that idea in a more tangible way and discuss ways to make PCCEP accessible to the public. And we will conclude with an open public comment period. Okay, and so with that said, I will hand it over to Subcommittee Co-Chair Ashley to kick things off.
Awesome. Thanks, Dory. Yeah, I definitely just want to start while I have the floor. A big thank you to Dory and your staff for all you do and helping us get these meetings going. As a volunteer, full-time job, mom, all the other stuff. I just feel, I feel really supported as a co-chair, and just wanted to thank you because I know it's not a thankless job. And thanks all of the community members here tonight. Thanks for always coming. Thanks for being groupies. Thanks for keep coming along with us. And I want to thank the fellow subcommittee members again for being here, and looking forward to developing this, the subcommittee to, be able to really support PCCEP's overall goals. So tonight I think is going to be a little bit more of a process meeting versus content meeting. And I know I'm certainly eager to get into content. I really enjoyed our policy and settlement subcommittee last week because I felt like we got to get into the substance. But tonight we're kind of going back to a little bit more process so that we can, really set forward on some good foundation of how this subcommittee will work with the goals overall of PCCEP. So I have a little list here. I'm going to be a little listy sounding. And thank you all. Also, just a big thanks to, having that limelight on me is a little weird. So thanks everybody and your patience as we, learn the ropes here. So talking about function of the subcommittee, of the community engagement subcommittee, T and I had some discussions about, what does this committee do? And not necessarily Oh, okay. Subcommittee, not necessarily what we do, but, how does it function? How does it look every day, every meeting? How do we take in the broader scope, the broader priorities of the PCCEP and do here? So we kind of came up some questions, which led us to developing some sort of, I guess we were calling it purpose right now of the subcommittee. And so we don't really have a presentation for that, but yeah, so we don't really have like oh, we do. Okay. Thank you. Thank you again, Dory. Great. Goals. Yeah. So we call them goals, call them purpose, just call, what is the function of the subcommittee and how will it work? So, number one, expand reach and improve accessibility. That's definitely a driving question that we hear a lot. And really that's like our job as a PCCEP is to be improving that outreach, improving that connection. So thinking about how the subcommittee is going to function in the larger PCCEP, we want to make sure the community engagement subcommittee is not only working to provide a forum for community input within this subcommittee, but within the broader PCCEP. And on specifically, I think on, talking about certain topics, I think we want to really get into the meat of stuff. And so understanding what is a priority topic for the PCCEP as a whole, and then finding time in this subcommittee to get community input, not just in the meeting space, but other ways too. And we hope to talk about that more tonight about some ideas. So again, the community engagement subcommittee, we hope that our agendas are driven by the, issues or topics or priorities that are driven by the larger PCCEP. And so we've, connected with Celeste and Pastor Weiner about this intent. And so we hope to all just work together and with all the subcommittees to make sure that, if there's a town hall needed, maybe the subcommittee is the one who is driving those efforts, or whatever avenue we want to decide as a group to pursue more connections with the community and getting their input on certain topics. And so we really want to make sure that's what we're doing in the subcommittee. Number two, hearing voices impacted by issues that the PCCEP is discussing. And then this one, and I'll just kind of elaborate with what's here you see on the slide. This really, I think, is kind of going to be the meat of what the subcommittee, what we hope we'll kind of talk about tonight in terms of how to, not only how do we hear voices, how do we create forums to hear them, but what do we do with what we hear? And how do we use that to inform the topics and issues we're trying to address? So thinking about ways, so I think of these, I guess, as tasks. So thinking of ways of tracking and reporting community input, identifying and building relationships with community partners, and research and planning the coordination of outreach events. So this will require looking into our list of community contacts, reaching out to our Michi partners, and there's so much work that's already been done. So a lot of it is just kind of revisiting. But these are the tasks, I think the subcommittee, we think these are the things that this subcommittee will be, lack of a better word, just in charge of, or making sure that that's a focus out of this subcommittee. And then number three, ensure impacted communities can weigh in on every policy recommendation the PC elevates. So again, this question of, what ways are we creating, connection and getting that input. And so again, I think Tia and I hope tonight that we can kind of plug away at some ideas. And I know we have a couple, and we've talked to a couple of you guys already, not in a big meeting, but just like one-on-one about what ideas we could do to hold us accountable to these goals, hold us accountable. What does it mean? Like I said, what does it mean to track how and how do we do that? And so hoping to kind of hash that out a little bit tonight as we move forward. Great. Yeah. Thank you for putting this up, and maybe we can hold this up during the work session, because I think we want to make sure, and also big thanks to Dory for the the presentation, the visual presentation. This is awesome. Really appreciate you, Dory. You take our words and you put them out into this when we have no time to do this. So again, thank you. But yeah, this is a great slide. I sort of understand, like, I think thinking about the questions we'll do during the work session for the next part of the meeting. We have a couple questions. I know Tia has a couple questions and she's going to help lead the first work session. So I'll stop there. It was a lot. I talked a lot. Yeah, thank you. Oh my God, Dory, you're like reading my mind. This is awesome. Yeah. I want to stop. I want to open it up to the subcommittee members first. We will have public comment at the end, and I definitely want to hear what you guys think about sort of this structuring of function of the subcommittee. But I will stop and I will see if any subcommittee members have any thoughts.
Yeah, so maybe we could start with thoughts or questions about any of the prior slides or what Ashley just shared. And then I know we have a couple of more structured, so I just want to pause and hold some space in a moment for everything that was just introduced. And then I think we do have some more structured questions in the next section. So if that works, maybe questions about anything that has been introduced so far.
Yeah, Pastor Meisner, excuse me.
No questions, just applause.
Well, thanks. Well, thanks. I think I wasn't sure if anybody was sick of process, in meetings, but so thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, we can pull those up again, Celeste, or I think we can pull up the goals list. Is that what you're thinking, maybe?
What I liked was the goals list, and hold on, because I was the goals and the methods list. Is there any way to get them like on the same screen together? Like a, what do you call it? A gallery view of them, or?
Not really.
Okay, no worries, no worries. I think this is excellent. And this is some of the things that we've been struggling with overall last year, prior to you coming on, is being able to get through some of the weeds and get to this, because even past members who are no longer with us, this is what they were looking for. This is fantastic. So I'm like Pastor Weisner. I just want to give you kudos first. I'm trying to let it soak in so I can give you a real, helpful substantive comment, but just thank you first.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad. I'm glad you guys are receiving it well. Tia, did you have anything to add in terms of, I know, in terms of.
I don't. You did a great job on opening us up and letting the group know what we're hoping for to really support PCCEP as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really what we want people to take away tonight, is that I'm sure, this will kind of be an ongoing conversation about process in terms of coming up with ideas. But I hope we take away that the subcommittee direction is to support PCCEP as a whole. And now that we've got a lot of holes within PCCEP sort of filled now, hopefully these goals will be easy enough to push forward. And so really just want to make sure that we're uplifting the most important part of our job here as members on PCCEP, which is connecting and getting real substantive input from the community and not only access but input, and then using that input. And I hope that's a real piece that is near and dear to my heart, is like, what do we do when we hear this input? Where does it go? Is there a place to put it? Is there a place to reflect on it? And so thinking about that kind of stuff. Jared. Oh,
Jared. Yes.
Yeah. Jared.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ashley. This is really a tremendous effort and excellent set of ideas. Something that I think has been lacking when only the substantive subcommittees were doing the work of recommendations. So I think this is really a fantastic idea. The question I had, and I don't want to put any like weight into it, it is just a genuine question, is whether you considered as part of the purpose one sort of substantive task on the topic of police reform. And I appreciate the facilitative. I mean, I think that's really an excellent idea and a big need. But in terms of things like the Bureau's community engagement or the Police Bureau's community engagement plan, I could see the subcommittee developing an expertise on how to engage with the community through these processes. And so I was just wondering if that was considered and declined or not considered, and or on the back burner, or what you think about that as potentially a substantive independent subject matter purpose for this committee. And again, no weight into that. Like, I'm not suggesting you should or you shouldn't. I just am asking the question.
No, that's a really great question, Jared. I'm glad you brought it up, because I think that we definitely had that in our list of I guess items that we bucket under the subcommittee. I think, Tia, we were calling them kind of like projects. So one project that kind of came out or thinking is, thinking about our connection. So that's, that's the big meat of what we're trying to like establish. And so, sorry, let me back up a little bit. So yeah, I think we've definitely talked about the community engagement plan. And I think that, to what you said, Jared, it's about bringing community input to those settings so that we can have a lot more influence. And I think I've heard from fellow members, again, just sort of, not trying to leave out the wider community, but just thinking about process and how we get stuff done is, we don't know. I have my own bias and my own opinions and my own agenda, but I can't sit here and serve the wider community and say, this is what we should be recommending and putting forward. So I think maybe, again, to answer your question, it's like, this is our part to get started and to get that input so that we can start making more decision, but also showing up in those spaces regardless, and learning and doing both. Because I think my personal goal of like my time at PCCEP is, how do we really influence that community engagement plan and really make that something that the community can feel connected to, not just Portland Police Bureau who's produced it, but like it's really, we're getting a lot of input. So I don't know if that answered your question, but yes, it is a lot more stuff we've talked about. I think this is like, we just want to kind of clarify what we think our function is, especially as we get started on this sort of, new makeup. Yeah. So yeah. Okay, great. Celeste, I think you're the first one.
One of the things that when we met with the racial equity subcommittee group met with Jared and city attorneys, we discussed an item, and I'll read it to everybody out of the settlement agreement, and it's paragraph 147. And we were looking at how we can make that happen as a committee. And we didn't know whether it necessarily fell squarely within the community engagement committee, or whether it was something that, might arise through the racial equity subcommittee. But that was our paragraph number 47, which says, Portland Police Bureau shall continue to collect appropriate demographic data for each precinct, so that the precinct commander, considering any input from PCCEP, may develop outreach and policing programs specifically tailored to the residents of these precincts. And the data shall also be provided to PCCEP to inform the work. And the idea is that there would actually be a precinct committee, or rather precinct public meeting, where this information would be discussed. And since that is specifically listed as a PCCEP purview, we were hoping to answer your question, Jared, to make that happen. And that's kind of reiterating, the conversation we had from roughly a month ago about how PCCEP can engage the community. Now, as I said, this is the first time I've had a chance to discuss that with the engagement committee, and I wanted to wait until they've got a framework and not even necessarily say that's what we're going to do, but this is something that we might consider as it comes directly from the settlement agreement.
That's really great input. And so there's the question, is this the subcommittee collecting this?
Not so much the subcommittee. This is something that the PPB would furnish, because as it said, PPB is the one continuing the data, but they should be developing an outreach policing program that's tailored to specific precincts. And so this is something that maybe PCCEP can help do with the community engagement. Now, it doesn't mean we're looking necessarily to do exclusively that or all of that, but just to look at how what we're doing fulfills that particular aspect of the settlement agreement. Did that answer your question, Ashley?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And Jared, that's one of the things we're looking at doing.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Celeste, for because I actually missed that subcommittee meeting. So that's good. That was a good input. Thank you. Or good insight. Tia, do you want to go?
Yes, I was muted. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So I wanted to clarify with Jared on if we had been working. I was confused at first on if we had considered the Portland Police Bureau's community engagement plan as we are doing our own plan. So I was wondering, Jared, but your chat message and Celeste convert message just made it more clear to me, but I want to make sure I'm really clear on, are you wanting, are you thinking that the community engagement committee would be not in line with the Portland Police Bureau community engagement plan, but making sure that us as a group is getting out their community engagement plan to the community? I just want to be really clear on how, are we parallel or are we, we're not the same, definitely not the same, but I got confused on, I thought you said, did you take into account the community engagement plan? And right when you said that, I felt a little confused.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tia, for adding any confusion. My question, and I do think Ashley and Celeste answered it, was whether this subcommittee, as one of its, independent substantive purposes or tasks, would evaluate and opine on the community engagement plan or the precinct community plans that are tailored per the demographics of that precinct, or whether this subcommittee would truly be like facilitative of the other subcommittees. So perhaps racial equity subcommittee would be looking at the 147 demographic and precinct community engagement, strategies, and whether, maybe some other subcommittee, settlement and policy, might be looking at the community engagement plan, which was created pursuant. That's the Bureau's plan. Right. Someone should be evaluating it. I mean, whether it's this subcommittee or some other subcommittee, I wasn't trying to put a finger on the scale. I don't care. That's up for you all to decide. And I did hear Ashley and Celeste get to that. And I've got no dog in that fight, or whatever the saying is. That's all for you to decide. So sorry to add confusion.
No, thank you so much. I feel like I'm totally in understanding now. Just taking a few notes to make sure we follow up with that. But yes, I in agreement.
Yeah, and I think also, I think we just really want to you know, I guess in my experience so far, you know, these are all baby steps. And so there's definitely like a wider net that the subcommittee could reach and do, but we don't want to do that just me and Tia. You know, we want to make sure that the entire PCEP, there's a plan, and then we're helping, you know, execute it or think of ways for the community about, you know, engagement. So, you know, so this is great. This is just sort of great input and food for thought as we move on. Cause I think there are like a list of, I've been calling them like project lists of what the subcommittee could do. But tonight we really just wanted to think about kind of strategy to our function, you know, and maybe creating tools for how the wider PCEP is reaching out and thinking about community engagement. So it's all still a work in progress, and yeah, you know, we're just trying to get the things moving and want to really use this time in this infancy right now of the subcommittee as it is to really support what the PCEP's trying to do. Yeah.
Great. Should we move on to this next portion? We're at about the time we stamped for that. So let's jump ahead to, so I think these framing questions, and I'll hand it back over to whichever co-chair was going to take this one, but I think the idea was that these are initial framing questions for this sort of work session, with first hearing comments from committee members and then also community members present. So yeah, these are some framing questions that they were hoping to get input on, and then of course it's open. Yeah, so I'll hand it back over.
Okay, thank you. I will go ahead and lead this group discussion. Our question was, how can PCEP provide an inclusive forum for community input? And when we say inclusive, we want to hear from different voices from across all spectrums, especially those impacted by law enforcement. And one of the examples we want to ask the members and community here is how to make the agenda input more accessible to members and community. And my first thought to lead the discussion would be the agendas will go out on emails to make agenda input. So for not just the agenda, but for input for the agenda. My thought was to have members in the community send out an email to the one or both co-chairs to have something added to the agenda for discussion, as well as co-chairs sending out an email request for agenda items. Maybe putting together an email list of community members who'd like to be communicated with so they can give their input for agenda items. So those are the thoughts I first had as putting this question together, and wanted to hear back from everyone here tonight on how you feel agenda input can be more accessible. Thank you. Let's start with that one and get some feedback, and then we'll move on to the next one.
Celeste, looks like you're first.
One of the things that back in the day when Tia and I were trying to figure out how to do this with Claudia, is we talked about connecting with a few target organizations first. And so one of them that Tia had mentioned was, like, for example, Daughters of Rahab, and then some of the organizations that served clients and constituents in Southeast, far out Southeast, especially on Southeast 82nd. Well, North and Southeast 82nd. And so what we thought was, we probably, they people who are under duress and not having all the needs met are not always going to be able to be timely with this, because even if we had a computer set up specifically for them to sit down and type in their thoughts, you know, it's a matter of they prioritize their time in terms of survival and well-being. So what we thought is we should provide a way for people to get information in, even if it's just by posting a paper notice prominently, that they could do that with a website. Some of these places do have internet connections where they might be able to meet. We also want to have this in the libraries, because that's another place where people have computer access. And so that was one good way to try to connect to folks who were not optimally connected. I know there's a whole bunch of connection in there, but basically I'm saying, you know, folks who don't have any other options can either see their service agency of choice or the library has something prominent posted in there, and take advantage of the fact that we are all both governmental agencies or non-governmental agencies, and, you know, form an alliance so that they can have this in a prominent place. Now, the other thing Tia and I had thought about, and this both has to do with the agenda and the other questions, is to ask for time to come and meet and talk to people and let them know this is an option. So, you know, this is one way we can at least make the agenda more accessible. And then our other community partner is our cable access partner. Back in the day when I was on that board years ago, when it was called Portland Cable Access, there we would have community information run on a board, or we would have the little runner at the bottom of the page where they did community updates. So that's two ways that we could consider getting some information out to people that's taking advantage of current connections.
Thank you. Love it.
Ashley, let's go to you next, and then we'll hear from community members in a bit.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted, I know I'm a co-chair, but, you know, wanted to add some input on how I've been thinking about this question too, is just definitely what Celeste you were leading on in terms of building on the relationships we have. And I think T and I have also talked about, yeah, creating like a kind of a welcome update introduction type letter, just to get some, like, you know, get some real, like, strong, like, it's one thing to sort of set up all the technical pieces. I mean, it's hard thing. It's not just one thing, it's hard thing, but it's as a part of it. But the other part of, like, trying to really gain some substantial partnership with groups in our community who, you know, who represent members of the community who would be really interested in this conversation and what we're saying, what we're trying to do. So I think, yeah, I'm hoping that as a whole PCCEP, we plan to spend some time on that, like, who are those people that who are those organizations? And I know we have lists, so looking forward to just hashing that out too. But I wanted to put my input that, like, really building not just key community groups, but also just, like, you know, real genuine, as much as we can in this space, connections to get people to get, you know, some good input. Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add a little bit from the staff perspective and what staff can do to support these first two items. So I think there is a lot we could probably do and hopefully collaborate on, staff and members, in terms of kind of PCCEP's virtual footprint. Definitely, you know, kind of making our website more user-friendly and accessible, and getting information out to the public. It's there, but in just a more user-friendly way. And I think we can also think about having a more accessible online form for agenda input. We do have that for open public comment currently, but it's not very well known. And so I think there are some ways we can think about using things that are already available to us to increase you know, the ease of participation, especially if somebody isn't able to attend a meeting. And then I also wanted to comment on what Celeste was mentioning. I think, you know, there is great benefit to having some hybrid or in-person events as well, especially, you know, if we were to have community engagement events. And so that's something to keep in mind too, as we move into, you know, further into 2023. And so thinking about, you know, just how we can collaborate with what I can help you do and, you know, the feedback from you all that would be, you know, that can help staff make those changes. I think Leslie is next.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Dory.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to follow up on a lot of the ideas that have been mentioned so far have been great. I really liked Celeste's idea of getting out there and like building closer relationships. I think I brought this up last time about, you know, do we have any materials or resources, or do we need to develop them so that we can get to those communities and organizations and talk really about the benefit to PCCEP of PCCEP to them? Because I think, you know, one of the things that we need to ultimately, we know that having a better engagement with, you know, the community and the police department is going to benefit everyone, but really getting some tangible, like, this is how it'll help you, will help us create those relationships a little bit better. And it will make them want to help us. They're really busy. A lot of these organizations are strapped for time. So detailing that benefit to them is important, of how it's going to immediately or near immediately impact and help their I guess constituents maybe. But so that was one thing. And the other thing is I completely agree with you. The public comment form, I don't think we get a lot of comments. We don't get a lot of comments. And I don't think it's because the community doesn't have anything to say. I think it's because we're not, it's not set up well enough for them. So I think there's a couple of things on that public comment form and potentially an agenda form that could be improved. And one of them is, I believe it requires name and email address. And a lot of people aren't comfortable with sharing information like that. So that could be something that we could reconsider. And then in addition, I know that there's a prompt that says, you know, provide public comment based on the agenda items. I'm not sure that I feel like that's a little bit still of a barrier, because if you're not used to providing public comment, like, what does that mean? Like, if I'm a brand spanking new person off the street that I just kind of want to engage and like say something, or like that engagement is still, I think it's for people that know how and when and like what they want to say type of thing. So I think there's still a little barrier there. So I don't know if we could improve it with like some specific questions related to the agenda items or some specific prompts that, you know, that way people can answer. And it's not just an agenda item on a list. I think that's like way more open. So yeah, those are just the comments on some of the things that have been mentioned.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Should we do Barb? And I want to make sure we're staying on time to get through the whole work session.
Yeah, I think we're doing well. Yeah, let's hear from Barb. Yeah. And then Barbara. Yeah.
So I wanted to thank Leslie for bringing up this stuff with the public comment, because I might be the only one that has actually done it. And what it looked like to me that came out was something completely unformatted and difficult to read. on your behalf. So I'm wondering if that's something that could be improved besides making announcements at meetings about what other meetings are coming up and how people can do input, and having staff accessible by phone or, even if it's just a voicemail and you have to check and call people back, or, and an email, because it's not really clear also on the website. If you email PCEP at blah, 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 are you sending stuff to like a whole list? Are you sending stuff to the PCEP members? Are we sending stuff to something that's curated by staff and then forwarded as appropriate? If that makes any sense, as far as from a community member thinking about ways to bring in input and saying at these community, at the meetings, we're interested in input on the agenda. There's these number of ways, putting it in the chat, blah, 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 that you can give us information. And that kind of brings me to the steering committee, but I'm going to put a pin in that for right now, Dory, and let other people talk. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to respond to the PCEP info, and let me put that in the chat. The PCEP info at portlandoregon.gov is the email address for PCEP. That is available to the public, and that is an email address regardless of what happens here. And I'm super glad we're having this discussion about increasing inputs for the public to provide PCEP with feedback and agenda considerations and public comment and all of these things. But however that goes, and whatever decisions are made and avenues increased, this email address is the way that the public will be able to reach staff, rather than, my personal phone number or anything like that. And that is just to make sure that I can respond to people in a timely and coherent fashion. So if anyone emails this email address that I put in the chat, you will get a response from staff. It goes to staff. I will see it. And I just want to take the opportunity to clarify that point. And Barbara is next.
Sorry.
Hi. Yeah, I agree with Barb, what she was saying about making things accessible, and I appreciate what you all are doing and that you really have the idea of you want to involve people. So that's good. I'm wondering, though, I know that there was some friction in particular with the Mental Health Alliance, who was on the original Mental Health Subcommittee early on in PCEP. And I'm wondering if maybe there needs to be a little mending of relationships in that, because I don't think any of you were here at the time, but they had done a lot of work and they felt ignored. And and maybe even looking at the input that they had and the suggestions they made some suggestions. And anyway, that's just all.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara. No, for sure, that's definitely on our brains.
Okay.
My hand went back up to say that that's a great idea, Barbara. And there was a time I actually went to my first subcommittee for people with mental illness, was what it was called. My first meeting was the meeting that they all resigned, but the behavioral health subcommittee and the racial equity committee did go back, and there was a recommendation that they had, and I'm sure we've talked about it, that we then did kind of partner with them and include them going forward, because it was their idea first, or that committee's idea first. So that's what I got there.
Yeah, thanks, Barb. I think that's, I think when we talk about our connections and our community building with organizations. And yeah, hopefully we'll get into a little bit more actually in the next session, part of this work session. I just kind of wrote my notes, like, how do we, mend that bridge again? Because they did do a lot of work, and, how do we create some stronger connection there again? Well, does anybody else? Oh, there we go. Hey, Pastor Weisner.
I seen Jared hand first.
I didn't have my list up.
Thanks, Pastor Weiser. I'd put it down and put it back up so you could go first, but I'll go since you deferred. I just had a thought on the agenda question and the input and making that accessible, both awareness and input from the community. And that has been an important aspect in my view, and the Department of Justice's view. Historically, the committee has done a good job of that through the steering committee. And, right now there is none. I know the planning happens sort of with the chairs, but I do think it's important to have that avenue. And I'm glad that you asked me the question. One thought I had about that, and again, you're free to decide how you want to do this, but I think it could be helpful if the various subcommittees and the PCCEP as a whole, I don't know if it applies as much to this particular subcommittee, but if they had quarterly or semi-annual plans or in advance, like kind of sketching out some topics or big level issues that might be discussed at that subcommittee or that full committee meeting, just so there would be advanced notice. Community members would then be able to, ideally if they saw it online or if they saw it elsewhere, public posting or whatever, then they could email in or find some way to reach out to a PCCEP member or staff to provide, oh, this would be an interesting, related topic to that, or another idea you should think about next quarter or next 6 months. And so I think just advanced planning can help make agenda input more accessible. And so I know that's puts a onus on everyone, but to me, that's one good way to do it if you're not going to set agendas in a publicly available meeting. Although I think that is another way you could do it. Each subcommittee and the PCCEP full committee could have a planning session to where they plan out a quarter. And so interested community members could attend that and provide their input then, and then it could be allocated based on, what the committee thinks is important. Those are just thoughts. Again, feel free to discard or modify or take what you think is helpful.
Good.
That was great. That's a great idea. Thank you, Jared. Pastor Weisner, did you want to go?
Yes, I just wanted to comment and hopefully kind of navigate. I don't need to, but the Barbara mentioned about mending relationships from hurt. I would like to hopefully inject that overall the community has been hurt, and there is a lot that I believe that we're working toward and hopefully looking forward to the future of what we can't fix from behind in the areas of what different organizations and people have felt. I'm sure that everyone here, without a doubt, has committed to making sure that no one's excluded or forgotten. And again, I'm not saying that, Barbara, to have a counter to what it is, but only to hopefully say, as where we are in today's presence, we have enough to know from behind us. But as we see what's going in front, everyone is, again, I think the outline was excluding everybody, including everybody, exclusive. So that's just my comment on that.
Thank you for those wise words. That's a really good thing to think about. And I know as a new member, really trying to carry on what has been done, but then also sort of recognize that there is this sort of, I don't know what word is the best word to use, revamp, renew, whatever it is. So thank you for, thinking about how we look forward, and mending what could, mending relationships, mending community relationships so that we can really do good work here. Leslie, did you want to make a comment? I thought I saw your hand, but.
Oh, yeah, I put it in the chat, but kind of going off of what Jared said, and I really appreciated before the subcommittees were solidified and we had co-chairs, how Dory sent out kind of a list of topics and asked for what was of interest to us, and then kind of voted that way. And I think as like our community base expands, having something like that, and I know that that would be a way that we can engage people. We might be even able to, I don't know, I know PCEP has a YouTube channel, and I don't know how active we are on like other social media, but email might not be necessarily the way to get to everyone. But if we can have like polls on like Facebook, for example, I know that that's the most used platform across age groups. That could be a way, if we do a poll on Facebook, that we also engage the public. And, if we pick, this is one thing that I'm not concerned with, but I definitely want to keep in mind. Dory does a lot of work for us. And we are, as we engage in community engagement, we're also going to have to be doing a lot of work managing that time and like that bandwidth. I don't think that we're able to do all of the social media and all of the channels. There's an infinite number of things that we can do in order to engage people. I think we have to pick like maybe one or two. And I would think Facebook, since it is the most popular platform, would be a good one to start with. And kind of see if we can get community input through polls through that. And the other thing I was thinking, this kind of leads into the next question, so maybe I'll hold it. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on getting input for agendas and things like that.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie.
So we are at 7. Is this feeling like a good time to take a break?
Well, I do want to take a break, but the break was supposed to happen after I did the first 2 questions. Should we hold the second question until after the break? Then it goes into the organization piece.
I would say maybe, because I think I don't want to cut that question off short.
And I'm wondering, I feel like we heard definitely points about both. I think that's what I was hearing. We can certainly pull that screen up and see if people have more direct things to say about that second point for sure when we come back. Okay. But I felt like, at least I certainly made a comment about both. I don't know if I feel like I heard things to that effect from others. But we can start there as a jumping in point, and then maybe get to the next part, if that sounds good to everybody.
Yes, that sounds good to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, thanks, Dory.
Okay, let's meet back here at 7:10.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Recording. Recording in progress.
And hello, everyone. Welcome back. Okay, so let's jump back in. I think we said by request, we would flag this second question here. So kind of explicitly asking the question how to make PCCEP content accessible to those unable to attend meetings.
Okay.
Looks like, yeah, Leslie has a comment there.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that I had unmuted already. That was presumptuous of me. Sorry about that. Yeah, I actually do have quite a few thoughts because I love this question. We need to lower the barrier to participation. That just has to be what we do because not everybody that is impacted is able to attend these meetings or see them afterwards. One of the things that, you know, I've noticed, then we talked about last time is the YouTube. It's really difficult to kind of find what you're looking for this past year because it's not cataloged right. And I know we're working on that, which is awesome. I'm kind of trying to think from the perspective of somebody that is 100% new. There's a lot to absorb in a very short amount of time. So one of the things kind of outside of this is like, can we create something like a PCCEP 101, either video or document or something like that, that just like very high level talks about what PCCEP is and how somebody can get engaged. I myself am finding, you know, kind of feeling like I jumped into the deep end. You know, even participating in some of the meetings and stuff like that, if you fall behind, you kind of fall behind quickly in everything that's going on if you're not participating consistently. So yeah, so that was one idea. And then also, I think I talked about it a little bit, but if we have like a Facebook that we're active in, it doesn't have to be a lot of high touch. We can definitely post stream the meetings that we are streaming on YouTube. We can also stream them via Facebook when they're happening so that people can access the content there so they don't have to have Zoom. Because right now you have to have Zoom to be able to attend virtually. That's not possible for everyone, but Facebook is pretty accessible. And then in addition to that, that could be where we post meetings, a lot of Facebook, you know, events, things like that, that can be posted there. We can also consistently engage with the community because you have comments and you have things like that, so you can be consistently engaging. Yeah, I think we also talked about connecting with organizations more. If there's a desire to having watch parties at those organizations or setting up watch parties at those organizations. I think there was a mention of Street Roots. I know that they do a lot of community events where people can gather and watch one meeting together. I think that's a possibility for interested organizations to increase the access to our meetings. Yeah, those are just some thoughts.
Awesome. Thanks, Leslie. Yeah, those are good. I mean, I think that's definitely what we're trying to get at here is what are those technical details that we can think about? Tia, what do you think?
The only other, let me downsize the chat. The only clarifying thing I want to make sure I'm clear on is we have the agenda, which is pre-meeting, and then we have the content, which is post-meeting. So I'm thinking in two different ways. I'm thinking about how do we get people to the table, and then how do we get information out that for the people who were at the table and then who missed the table. So, and is it all the same avenues? Like Leslie and others have been talking about. Email, online, on the website, poster boards, bulletin boards, media, materials, social media, YouTube, stream, watch organizations. That's where I'm wanting to make sure that we are getting information out after the meetings as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we're going to talk about this more in the next part of the work session of like, I think this is like you're saying, Tia, is connected to, sorry. is connected to like how we're not only how we're tracking like community input, but yeah, how are we like going back and making sure not only like that the details went out, but then like also what are we doing with that info and how do we report back and how do we give like some accountability measures to the community? I think Leslie said it before, just like what benefits are we giving the community by coming to our spaces? And I think in that same question, not only with like the accessibility and the logistics, but also is like how what I've heard from the community so far in my time on here is like, you know, what are we doing kind of with that listening? And then how is it informing and how are we using it to inform our decisions? And again, like I've only been on it for about 6-7 months. So haven't had to, you know, a lot of it's been processed and restarting a little bit. So hopefully as time goes on and we kind of adopt some new, you know, some tracking mechanisms like maybe the quarterly plans or agenda findings, we can get better at just holding ourselves accountable to the community and for giving us their time and their input. So I just wanted to.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Ashley.
Thanks, Tia. Do we want to move on to the next? Actually, no, I don't want to go too fast.
Yes, I'm ready for the next, but do you want to answer? I see Barb
has a hand up. Sorry. Barb, do you want to go?
Yeah, I think that one of the ways to make this stuff accessible is to be having your meetings out in the community at times so that you are literally touching the people. But I'm also concerned online and in person about the safety in the meetings. And from a trauma-informed perspective, I think it's something that this group could really benefit from and would be helpful to have. Like the behavioral health subcommittee was pretty much a safe space for people with behavioral health issues because we worked to do it that way, kind of thing. So I think the intention, I think, has to go into it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, that's it for that. Thank you.
Sorry. I just want to say thank you, Barb. I just want to note how like that's such an important thing to think about when we talk about accessibility to spaces, how they're trauma informed. Everybody in every community can benefit from learning more about those tools. So hopefully, I mean, that could be a good question for PCCEP staff, you know, is that more training for PCCEP as a whole? Can, you know, add some more training. We've got time, but
that question has been on my mind a lot lately. I attended a community engagement event for one of our other commissions last night, and I think thinking about how you actually apply make a safe space or a trauma-informed approach in a meaningful way when talking about these issues is actually an incredibly challenging task. I do not have the answers there. I don't think it's simply a training issue. You know, like how do you provide an inclusive forum for community input where you're not limiting it to any, you know, certain opinions, any certain types of, you know, community members? Certainly that's not something we would do, and actually guarantee that you can provide of course, you know, a physically safe space that we can guarantee, but you know, yeah, how do you do that? I think it's actually a really, really challenging and complex and rich issue to discuss. I think that could be an ongoing discussion in this subcommittee. I have lots of questions swirling around about that kind of freshly myself. And yes, trauma informed, I think, you know, there is some structure to that thinking, but as far as what is a safe space, what does that mean? I think complex, that's all I'll say. Leslie?
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up with Barb. What was it? Because you said that was a trauma-informed or a safe space for you. That was and so I was wanting to talk a little bit more and see if you can expand on that and like what made it so that if there's anything that we can take into that, we can definitely incorporate it.
It's actually probably more than I want to take up time saying right here, and I am happy to meet with any of you guys to talk about it in more depth. And I'll say a couple of things though. One is maybe to say a safer place rather than a safe place. That's one of the things we've done with the Behavioral Health Resource Center. But there's all kinds of meetings. Oh wait, you want me to talk about the subcommittee meeting from us? The way we made it a safe space was like when we had officers on the panel, we reminded the community members that were there that, that they were donating their time, volunteering their time to come and talk to us, and that people needed to be respectful. And there was a staff member that was very good at reminding people in the chat when people put chat things in. And there was enough staff to take care of stuff like that, including Zoom bombing, which sometimes when we put things on Facebook, that was one of and when I say we, I mean you, sorry, put it up there, and there was a heck of a lot of Zoom bombing a couple different times. The other thing is that City Hall has rules of decorum. And so if you've ever watched what they do and how they do when they've had issues, it's not uncalled for to ask somebody to not be yelling and swearing, for example. And you can limit, you can ask people if we're talking about certain deep things, you remind people that to take care of themselves, and that if they want to talk to somebody in a breakout room, that can be made available for them, or they can just step away. Trigger warnings, all kinds of things like that. And it's a big topic. I agree, Dory, and I don't think it's all on you at all, but I think it's really important given the community that you guys want input from, that's been harmed and that has, bad history with this topic. So things are going to be triggering for some people, but there's a line between somebody using their voice to say what they want to say and somebody, swearing and this, that, and the next. So, in person, there's a whole nother set of things that was done, including frickin' having food. That is one of the most trauma-informed things that helps at in-person meetings at times, because, some people just get grumpy and a snack is going to help them. Was that useful, Leslie? And Leslie, I am so into meeting with you offline for coffee or a phone call.
Yeah, that was useful. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of get an idea of like your perspective on the trauma-informed aspects of things, because it sounded like you were very appreciative and attached to the subcommittee meetings. So I wanted to get some insight into that.
Yeah, if you watch some of them, the chats weren't saved, but you can kind of tell. And we had ECIT officers, which are the behavioral health specialists, and then we also had rank and file, like 3 each, and they were pretty darn comfortable talking to us. And it was because it wasn't a hostile room, I'm sure.
Well, that's really good input. Thank you. Thanks for those questions, Leslie. Celeste, do you want to go?
One of the groups, and I'm going to answer something that Barb asked, and then I want to also mention one issue about Trump, the partners we have right now is we need to really broaden the partners that we're working with regard to trauma-informed care, outreach, etc. Because again, I'm going to say this, people sometimes forget there is a racial component to this. I've been in communication with Dr. Alicia Moreland Kapuya, who worked with the Ava Gorley Center for Community Mental Health. And she has her own effort right now and has offered to work with us to help us understand not only the intersectionality of race and mental health, but some broader ways of addressing mental health that deal with marginalized communities to somehow, and this is not a criticism, it's just a fact, it's an observation and a fact, somehow the larger white community in mental health forget. And so this is not a one size fit all. We need more than one partner. And so that's who one of the people that I'm working with, one of the organizations I'm working with. And I'm looking to bring in more than just people who have already been here, because we need to hear other voices. So with regard to trauma-informed care, protocols, modalities, et cetera, I'm trying to bring these people under the umbrella of the Racial Equity Subcommittee, as we also deal with mental health issues. And so that's one of the things that Pastor Weisner and Byron and I have talked about, is how do we incorporate those aspects and those perspectives as well. Oh, that's it. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Celeste.
Yeah.
I have pulled up this next slide here, which have the other questions that the co-chairs posed, just to let everybody know, and I will turn it back over.
Would I be out of line if I kind of followed up a little bit on Celeste?
Yeah, Barb, if you don't mind, we'll let Pastor Weisner go, and then we can finish up with you, and then move on to the next question.
No, please don't. I miss Barb. Please, you go first. I'm gonna give her first comment, and then I can follow behind. I didn't see Barb.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And so yes, Celeste, and I don't know if I should start everything with talking about intersectionality, because I can only talk from my experiences. So I don't mean anything negative by that at all. I want to say that there's kind of good news. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with Ebony Clark, who's been the director of the health department for Multnomah County for the last, she started probably half a year into the pandemic, but she's the former behavioral health director and deputy behavioral health director for Multnomah County. And she has been tapped to be the new interim, and hopefully it'll turn into permanent if she's any good at it, behavioral health director for the Oregon Health Authority. The Oregon Health Authority are the people that run OHA, which is Medicaid. And it's also, they've done, all the virus stuff and all that stuff. And it's been something bringing by, changing the mental health and bringing more Black people in and getting their voices and all this other stuff has been a big passion of hers. So I consider some of that like good news. And I just wanted to share that with you guys. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks, Barb. Yeah, I just put a link of the article about it in the chat. Thanks.
Thanks, Ashley.
Awesome. Pastor Weisner, do you want to follow up?
I want to relinquish for time's sake. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. That sounds good. Tio, anything else before we move on?
No, let's get to Pastor Weisner as soon as we finish up the second session, or maybe I'll come back to you and then get him started with, and then go into the public comment.
Yeah.
Does that work? Okay.
Wonderful.
Trying to keep an eye on time as well.
Yeah, I think we're good.
But I appreciate everybody so much.
Yeah, no, I feel like we've had some really good discussion, some good questions, some good things to reflect on, and really appreciate everybody, stepping forward and talking. I think whatever community work is really hard, and listening is just like the main point. And so thank you all for your time on doing that. And so Tia, was I gonna?
Well, I added a couple more questions on here, so I thought I'd continue if that's okay, Ashley.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Not to be a computer hog.
No, gosh, no, you do not have to hog this space.
So we wanted to talk more now on how we can really get the subcommittee active and involved, so we can be great change makers in the community. And the first, though, is we want to make sure to track community input as they come in. And I'll start with, I felt that we could track community input online by compiling our notes, trying to get names, input, and possible contact information so we can track community input. Online seems a little bit more challenging than in person. So if other people have ways to track community input when we're on Zoom or Facebook Live. In person, I know we would use materials like posters and sticky notes, and be taking notes with the actual laptop. That's real easy for me as a facilitator. And then create spreadsheets to make sure that we have all of the community input, so that the community knows that we're really hearing. We really want to hear the community, and show hearing and listening as an action for us, and get that back out to the community so that we can respond to PPB and doing our work with the settlement agreement. So I wanted to just we wanted to get more information on how do you see that we can track community input in person or online for now. Thank you. Leslie.
Yeah, I think in person, you're right, it would be so much easier. But online, I think there's some tools and capabilities of Zoom that maybe we haven't tapped into yet. There is the question feature. We use only chat. And I don't know if maybe that's something that Dory can look into like, sorry, it's late, so I'm forgetting the word, but into using the chat feature of Zoom, or I'm sorry, the question feature of Zoom, so that if a community member has input, they put it in as a question, then we can export that as a file that is on an automatic spreadsheet that we can track. So that's one way virtually that we could do that.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that feature is only available if we were to switch to webinars.
I see.
Which we have tried with PCCEP, and it was not a popular option.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's other apps and integrations too that we can use too, like that, approximate something like a questions thing. Yeah, I think when you do a webinar, that makes it so people can't unmute themselves, right? And like you'd have to like unmute them or like call for them to unmute, and that just makes it a lot more procedural. But we can explore other types of things. We can even do something as simple as like at the beginning of a meeting, dropping a Google Docs link into the chat and having somebody fill in like their name and a question or their comment. So we can do it real low tech too. Relatively low tech, I guess, because you're still using the computer.
Okay, good ideas. Thank you. And any other ideas on tracking community input?
I have an idea that I wanted to share with the subcommittee and the co-chairs. Kind of something I was thinking about with our last subcommittee last week with policy and policy and settlement. How are I know all of us as members sort of take notes, and I'm just wondering, maybe as co-chairs, which is hard to take notes and facilitate and all that, but if co-chairs of each subcommittee could at least create some sort of summary of what was, what kind of input was given during a meeting. And so I'm talking maybe more about just what we are doing now, which is online meetings. And then, yeah, Tia, like you were saying, using some spreadsheet, some low tech stuff to just sort of track all the comments. And then we can start to create some, see some themes and see some sort of same questions that are being asked. I think that could be really helpful. And so like, there's the technical part, and then thinking like as co-chairs, wondering if, as we start to figure out how to develop our agendas moving forward, if like sending a summary from each subcommittee of like, this is what we heard, or this is what we talked about, so that we're creating some reports at least. And that could be like, I guess those would have to be public too, but just thinking about how we as PCCEP members use the input that we're getting and tracking it and kind of putting it in a place for, because, we're all going to be switching out in 2 years or whatever. So like having a place where this input is just saved so that we can gather it over the years even. Yeah.
Yes.
Leslie?
Yes.
Yeah. Something.
Sorry. Yeah, so I know that I'm gonna ask about this, but I know that there was a recommendation tracker in development, Dory, and I just kind of wanted to ask the status of that, because as comments move to recommendations, that could be another platform to inform the community of what recommendations are moving forward and like how they're progressing. So I think that could be, yes, I just wanted to ask what the progress on that is.
Yeah, send me an email. I'm happy to update you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Is that a city thing, Leslie? Or?
It was something that was discussed in one of our very early meetings, that the city, or that I think, well, Dory's going to provide more details, but I thought it was a PCCEP specific thing. We're trying to like scrounge up and find all of the recommendations that had been given by PCCEP so we could put them in one document, and then, or in one kind of dashboard, I think. And that way, and that we could have and track. And to your point, I think the knowledge, like the institutional knowledge, is very important. So we don't have to go from like, start from scratch every time we have like a new member. So, but yeah, it sounds like there's some stuff that I need to follow up with Dory on, and I'm happy to copy you, Ashley, and Tia on that.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, we have some, I can just say a little more. We definitely have a lot of work done, and more we want to do. But yeah, happy to share that with you, and yeah, discuss that more. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking at my notes. Okay. The second question we wanted to ask are, what are some ways we can approach outreach? But like, for example, would we want to assign subcommittee members or PCCEP members to specific activities? For example, a coffee chat with a community member, all the way up to a public forum, town hall meeting, listening sessions, presentations at schools and organizations. There's so many different activities we can be doing for outreach. Or would we want to assign members or have members sign up to take on specific organizations or to specific types of organizations, and have members or subcommittee members do outreach to specific people or by specific activities. So I did make a list. I don't know if I can share a screen, if I can put up a list of activities that we have brainstormed, and then put up another document on organization types. We have a list of organizations going from both the previous PCCEP staff and chair people, as well as the Youth Summit outreach that we did with Gloria a couple months ago. Okay, looks like
I'm just putting.
you're putting it in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, she can share it too. I just thought this would be.
Yes. Oh,
Right.
I
can't
can pull up this list of community organizations for starters. It is a great look at the kind of some of the work that's already been done. Might be nice to take a look at that. So just hang tight here. Is it the first?
I'm also writing in the chat.
Yeah, in any case, we have a pretty solid list of community partners. It seems like the past PCCEP has worked with some of them in the past. And there's and maybe has cultivated relationships with others. But that was a while ago at this point. And so, but I think this can help sort of get this subcommittee started in terms of focusing on where you want to spend your time, how you might want to narrow, who you want to cultivate relationships with, maybe depending on a certain issue that's up for discussion at a certain time, or, however you want to think about approaching that. Looks like Leslie has some input.
Yeah, sorry. I keep talking, but if somebody else wants to raise their hand, I will definitely shut up. So this list was compiled from basically like a few emails and stuff that were sent around. So that's how this was compiled. So the organizational focus, one of the things too is there's like 80 organizations on this list. I don't think it's feasible to it's feasible to like address all of them, but what I was thinking is we can start with the the organizations that we already have relationships with, right? If we personally do, because this is compiled from a lot of different sources. So adding a couple columns to this, that there's like who already has a relationship with these organizations. And then that could be a way to, bring them in. Because that's going to be the low-hanging fruit. That's going to be the easier ask than an organization that you have absolutely no relationship with, or that we have no relationship with. And then seeing where the gaps are in terms of representation. I think one of the things that we can see here is like, we want diverse perspectives. We want, I guess, to make sure that we're engaging people from every single community, or like as many communities as we can. So if we already have a relationship with an organization, then that's great and we can engage with that. But if we find that all of our relationships are within a certain, focus, then what other organizations can we talk to from the other groups that we can bring in so we have that diversity of perspective? So adding a couple columns to this and using it as a tracking sheet, I think would be great. and having this be kind of almost our target list of organizations that we're going to work with, and who's like the point of contact in our organization, or in PCEP, as well as in the organization, because that's the other thing too. We have a list, but we don't have who is the outreach person and like who we should talk to in that organization. So speaking of that institutional knowledge, this is something that we can carry forward into the future and future iterations of PCEP, so that we can always have like, okay, we've had relationships with this might be the person to reach out to, and we don't start from scratch.
Totally. And like this list that Dory were showing, I haven't cross-referenced it, but this is the same. This includes our amicus, like our list from the amicus, like the metrics for success. And we had all those like it's like, oh, it's longer than that, I guess. Oh, it's more. Sorry, there's more. Oh gosh. Yeah, it's like over 50 other different organizations. And so just like, is this list include all those people, all those organizations? And just, you know, Leslie, to your point, like, should we be working on this list since that was confirmed a while ago to be sort of our target organizations? Does that make sense? That question makes sense?
Yes. Can I add
Yes.
something really quick? This does seem pretty overwhelming. There's so many organizations out there. And the first thing I guess I want to come back to be clear is that we're basically putting a list together to start off with who we partner with, who we want to get the information out to, who we want to hear from. Really who we want to hear from, I think, is number one. And thinking about the list, also maybe starting with the community letter and a mailing list. And with the community letter, have all of us work on that together and take it to the full board to talk more about how we can put together a letter and get it out to the new PCEP and how we want to get engaged with the community and such. So I just wanted to get that out. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tia. I think that's a great idea. We talked about that before, so that could be a good maybe agenda item if, you know, depending on what the co-chairs say about sort of our priority for maybe the next meeting should be. So yeah, I like that a lot. I know we've talked about that. Barb, if you don't mind, I'm just going to go through PCEP members. I want to get their time, and then we'll definitely come back to you for sure, because we want to make sure to get community input at the end. Gloria, do you want to go? You're on mute. Sorry, can you unmute her?
How about that? Okay. I'm wondering, it looks like we're trying to do two things at the same time. We're recruiting for PCEP, but we're also trying to get information out to the community that we're supposed to be servicing. So are we going to have a priority? Are we trying to fill the PCEP positions so that we're more inclusive to this list here? Or are we trying to make sure that we're getting information out to the community that already exists? See, I'm kind of confused.
I think I can clarify that. So I think in terms of PCEP membership, that is the responsibility of PCEP staff and the mayor's office. Of course, we are very appreciative of PCEP members reaching out to your networks and supporting PCEP membership recruitment. but that is ultimately the responsibility of staff. And we are actively going through that process now, I'm happy to say. So I think this discussion is not about PCEP membership. I think what I'm understanding is this is a discussion about outreach and engagement for community voices we want at the table to kind of like those first goals of the subcommittee, to be heard in PCEP work and recommendations, but not to necessarily serve on the committee.
Just to be at the table.
Or I mean, to do the function of the PCEP, which is to
engage
ways and connection and engage with the community. And so we could, I think I see it as we can only do so much with emails and announcements. Like this is like the real work of working and connecting to organizations who have more pathways with the members they serve, who should be connected to the conversations we're having here at PCEP. And so it's like an extra layer of real community engagement that we can't get from a survey or an email announcement. So that's how I would see it.
Well, that helped me. Thank you.
I had a comment as well about kind of the overwhelming nature of this list. And the co-chairs and I had discussed this in kind of thinking about this subcommittee. So I think what will help is some of this might just hopefully kind of come into view a little bit as this subcommittee does respond to the priorities set by the larger PCEP. So for example, if the full PCEP begins discussing, I'm going to use an old example, last spring, if the full PCEP is discussing body-worn cameras, and this subcommittee then takes up the task of planning a town hall for body-worn cameras, it might become kind of, it might sort of clarify itself what types of community partners or who on this list. I mean, that's a pretty broad example because we would want a very broad swath of the community, certainly, to partner with on an issue like that. But that might help you narrow your focus. Who would we want to partner with? Who do we really need to hear from on that issue? What is required by the settlement agreement? What additional voices do we hope to have at the table for this particular kind of event? And I think that'll kind of help focus and narrow and kind of pare down this really long, overwhelming list.
Yeah, thanks, Dory, for that clarification. That makes a lot of sense.
Oh, and I think that also speaks to that issue of buy-in that Leslie mentioned earlier. It's sort of like, what are we offering the community? Why do they, why do they show up? And it's sort of, it's they need a reason to participate. And I think thinking about it through that avenue of events and providing that space is helpful in that regard for me.
Mm-hmm. And maybe as we think about this community letter, Tia, we're thinking about like that in that letter, we're saying this is what we're offering and this is what we need. Hi, buddy. Good night. I'll see you in the morning, Kate. And so definitely like kind of like giving them like some details and then doing the due diligence of following up. So thanks. I want to thank you for that. And I want to make sure we get Celeste and Leslie, and then I don't know if we'll have time. Yeah. Does that sound good? And then we'll go to Barb.
Hey, I wanted to kind of back you all up and support you in this list. It's a big list, but it's not like this is who we're contacting. This is to give us an idea of who is doing what. The people we want to reach out to are not necessarily these, but their clients, constituents, customers, etc. And we also want to try to go to the organizations and speak to their clients and constituents as we're able. So, yes, we've got a lot of folks who are doing a lot of important work. But some of the people we want to contact are actually those who are in places like the shelters, or again, just because I mentioned it earlier and I'm looking right at you, Tia, Rahab's, sisters, or, we want to go to those places because that's where the people are. These other organizations are service. They may be direct service organizations, but they're not necessarily going to bring us people. We need to go where the people go. And so don't be fearful that this is a big list. Also, when we look at it, we can sort through it, and maybe some people are on different tiers or different levels of contact. Maybe this group are just people who get our notices and they make sure they put it where their clientele can see it. So it's not like we're trying to bring an entire metropolitan community to the table. We're just looking at them in terms of outreach. So I really applaud my colleagues for getting a real comprehensive group. But don't be frightened by this list. This list is not who we're going to be trying to work with, partner with, whatever. They're just ways that we can get our message out. Does that kind of help clarify it? And does that support, Ashley, what you're trying to do by sharing? That's what I thought. Okay, so I just want to give you a big big ups and say, don't be frightened, people, when you see this big list. This is not everybody we're trying to contact.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Les, for that input. I think that's really crucial. Like we're a small team, so let's just do what we can. And but this is just a way to strengthen how we're meeting people where they are, and getting that info. And so I just want to know, I think it's been a little conversation in the chat, at least congruently with what, trying to build those relationships right now, the things we know we could do are at least collecting the contact information, because even just getting that to be able to send out announcements and stuff could be really just a piece that's missing. Like you said, Leslie, the gaps, let's look at those. So I'd like to propose that for our next agenda, if there's not something that the wider PCCEP wants to focus on in terms of a topic, or maybe we can do both in an agenda. Pastor Weisner, and then I definitely want to get to Barb before we leave, because I know we keep pushing you, Barb.
I hate always extending in my areas of not something that's adding to the conversation, it seems like to me. But just kind of saying it like this is that when you're small, it's a lot of work. It seems like a lot of work. But that's the intention where we are right now with the little due diligence that we're doing, because we have a future ahead of us, a year ahead of us, that will attract more people. And at that given point there, I believe we see the vision even going further. And I just want to encourage, as Celeste have already said, the starting point. It's not that I see it differently, and I hope everybody else see it like I see the future. It is a great place for us to begin, and great work, guys, on this here. This is really a fantastic meeting tonight.
Oh. Awesome. Thank you for that. Dory, Tia, should we move on to just public comment? So we got Barb and Barbara raising their hands, and then, we'll carry this conversation on to the next month's agenda. But Barb, please. Thank you for keeping your hand up.
Sure. Now somebody put it down. Thank you. Or no, they didn't. Never mind. I will. I have a whole bunch to say. Will you please put that list back up? Is that possible, Dory? Because that list is like a comprehensive list that mishmashes. At least the first 10 topics on there are around public safety, and most of them are Portland Police, and most of them look like the topics from the Behavioral Health Subcommittee meetings, because the very first one we had was the chair of the Training Advisory Council. You know, the CIT team that, you know, the next several things were trainings and information sessions around those things, right? Not to say, you know, so they're not people to reach out to for community per se. There's other things on there, you know, where they are good in inroads into community members. I want to tell you that Nathan has been very humble, and he is the current Training Advisory Council president. And I want to say that the list also has, like, the list that Ashley had definitely has some duplicates and stuff on it. Here's a separate thing. I'm wondering if this committee will have veto power over the mayor or the mayor's office deciding that you all are gonna hold a town hall on something, or look at Court Patrol Services or other things that really took time away from PCEP's, some of PCEP's true goals and missions. So that's something that I thought about. And then I think Mary Claire is gone. I don't know who Andy is, but I will say that the way we as a committee, the former Behavioral Health Committee, were able to get officers invited when we wanted them was because the member of the BHU that the lieutenant that used to come passed us off to is the training coordinator. So the training coordinator and the training team sees everybody, all the officers throughout the year. So that was super helpful in getting cops here. Mary Claire, my dear friend, was not helpful getting cops here. Even though we were offering to hold something for them to correct what they had complained about with a survey we sent out and they didn't get to fill out on. Anyway, I'm not trying to babble. I'm trying to be helpful. And I think I'll stop there. Oh, Tia, to answer your question real quick. So TAC is the Training Advisory Council. The CIT is, remember we talked about all the officers have that training, and then there's extra behavioral health officers that have the other another 40 hours of training, and these people are all part of the behavioral health unit.
I know what all of them are. I don't know
Oh,
why
I'm
they're on the list.
Oh, I misunderstood your question. I apologize. Thanks for stopping me.
No. And when I was creating the types of organizations that we have, I typed out the ones I included in my previous chat, which was the DEI, mental health, all the way through the justice system. And at the very end of my list, I put PPB question mark, because I didn't know how we wanted to partner with PPB, and I want them at the meetings, of course, but should they be on the list? I didn't realize that they would be on a list.
Yeah, Tia, I'm wondering, maybe for the next meeting, we can clean this up and have like a more serious proposed list based on just like the link that I sent and this list and stuff.
Yes, I would love that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think we could make that promise to the community, but for the next meeting.
Did Barbara Baczynski have a public comment?
Thanks. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, I did. I was just hoping that Celeste's comments about how safety for in the Black community might be different than white people. I hope that concept gets incorporated from the get-go You know what I mean? Like as a fundamental part of it, not as an add-on later, kind of.
Mhm.
I'm just saying, and you guys are probably all thinking the same thing, but I just hope that, because I know it's hard to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I thank you for reminding folks of that. And yes, I'm looking at, and not just safety in the Black community, although that is a focus, but safety with other minority communities. Because one of the issues I hope to address is some of the very valid and profound concerns that come out of the Native community, of which I'm part of, So I want to address as broad a spectrum and input as possible for folks who are marginalized, and to make sure that they are heard and we're working with them. So yes, to answer your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, gosh, I mean, oh yeah, so
Okay.
go ahead, Tia. Go ahead, Tia.
Sorry, can I just do a quick summary of what I'm thinking about? I took notes, and I know PCCEP is taking notes. It was a lot to take in today. Wanted a great discussion, but I hope in summary, we can all get back together via email as members and talk about the list, get that organized, and then check in with everyone what they would like to take on to feel like they're an active member in outreach, either through the community engagement subcommittee or any PCCEP member, and the community as well. How does the community want to reach out to their own community? So I'm hoping in summary that we can feel organized as we end the meeting tonight. So I'm feeling like we kind of are, there's just so much happening for me. But I am taking notes, which I didn't think I would take notes, but it does help me remember. So I'm feeling a little all over the place. So I just wanted to make a summary of, I hope we can, maybe Leslie and I can get together to organize the list, send out a list, see what people really want to get into. If people want to be engaged by activities or be engaged by organizations.
And I would even just say, let's just maybe even do babyier steps. That's a word.
Okay, yeah.
And, definitely it's promised the community to come back with a more cleaned up list to review. And yeah, just have members, subcommittee members, if we can convene on email about maybe what organizations they can work with to get contact information, and that could be like a side project for everybody. I was hoping that we could get to that, but yeah, if that's part of your summary of just like what could be our next tasks. And I think we did a good job today. I think there was a lot to took in. Appreciate everybody's input and the community showing up again. This wasn't as painful of a process meeting as I thought it was going to be. We had some really good info or good info sharing.
This was a great meeting.
Good. Oh, so good to hear.
Yes.
Yeah.
We got a lot of substantive work done. We clarified things. This is a wonderful meeting. Thank you.
I agree. Great. Well, great. Well, I will stop talking. Dory, will you take it over?
Yeah, so I just want to give a quick preview about what's next. So we will continue our meeting rotation. I want to note that I ran out of space on this slide, so all of the February meetings are not on here, but I did want to note that the February 1st Settlement and Policy subcommittee meeting will be the Cocoa Town Hall slot. There will be probably one other agenda item in that meeting, but it will primarily be the Cocoa Town Hall. And then we will have, of course, our Community Engagement Subcommittee, Racial Equity Subcommittee, and full board meeting in February as well. But I wanted to put on here for all of you that the status conference hearing is coming up pretty soon too. That's on a Tuesday. It is during the day. So of course, that is not an accessible time in the context of this conversation, but you know, if you can make it, it is really informative and kind of, you know, super interesting and great to get that perspective. So it's always good to have a couple PCEP members there. And of course, because we are also required to present in some fashion. So just want to put that on everyone's radar. And I think that's also available by phone. So yes, with that said, thank you to all of our attendees this evening, PCEP members, members of the public, and our accessibility support for your contributions tonight. The time is now 8:11 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.
Recording stopped.